Luminary Love Leaders. For a while, I knew like the bigger picture. I could feel like the future of what this is, but the naming of it hadn't come yet until one night in the middle of the night, I heard it. And I was like, that's it. Luminary Love Leaders. We are here to be the light. And the highest aspect of who we are is to love. And the only way to transform the world is to lead in love. And if we look around, we know that there are more people in leadership that are here for power, that create division and scarcity, and that are not sacred leaders. And so this wants to be a space to inspire people that want to lead in love, to rise up in that way. And it's going to look different on the planet than people that are maybe running for office and showing up on a stage. Not that that's wrong, or not that those people aren't leading in love, but I've found that a lot of people that are really here to lead in love, they don't really care about being seen in that same way. They authentically just show up in that way. They are homeless. They are living in what we would say is poverty, many of them. And I have met plenty of people that are leading in love that you might never meet or see, but that's what we need right now. And so I want to inspire more people to lead in love and to rise in their power who are here to love. The word luminary literally means a person who inspires or influences others, especially in a prominent or particular sphere of life. So you are here, the way that you light up the world is to inspire and influence people, I would say, through love. A natural light-giving body. Your body, we are actually light beings. The highest form of who we are is light. I mean, if we think about it, if we go into a room that is completely dark and you light the tiniest light, I mean, it's a metaphor we've heard over and over again, but if you just contemplate that, you can see the power of the mustard seed, the power of one tiny light on this planet to ripple. And then what happens when that candle lights another candle and lights another candle, the room is illuminous, right? That is the call that we are stepping into. Luminary love leaders. That is this call. And the call is from the heart. Anahata means the heart. We know that we as human beings have the gift of the mind. Brilliant, beautiful gift. The mind is a powerful tool, but we are not here to use the mind as our power or our authority. If your heart stops, the body dies. If the mind stops, we know that there's machines that can keep the body alive. If the mind dies, if somebody is brain dead, we can keep the body alive. So the mind is not the power of who we are here to be. It's not our power. The heart is our power. So everything comes back to the heart. The heart is the home of who we are. And then when we study human design, and it's okay if you don't know what that is, if you haven't worked with me in that, human design. But in our human design, in our chakras, in our soul's light body, the heart is what's called the magnetic monopole. In other words, it's the seat of the soul. It's our highest aspect. I call it the sacred heart. And it's literally what magnetizes life to us. The law of attraction, you could call it, but it's the heart is our magnetic force. So based on the frequency of our heart, it's how people feel us, how people are drawn to us, how people receive us, and how we light up the world. So this journey is about the frequency of our heart and how our heart's showing up, the power of our heart. Okay. And if we think about people are like, oh, everything is light and love. That is not who we are here to be, just light and love. there is the integration of suffering. Yeshua, Jesus, came here to embody what it meant to be both human and divine, to walk in suffering as well as in love. And in that way, he and other people on the planet have shown us what it's like to live right alongside our greatest suffering and our greatest fears, because that's the medicine of the heart. There is a shadow in religion, organized religion, and in spiritual teaching, spiritual communities that say about getting to heaven, reaching enlightenment, ascending, this whole like, I'm here to ascend, I'm here to ascend. And in those teachings, we forget to be human. And sometimes in that way, we can get so lost up here in the ethos and in striving for something higher than ourselves that we forget that the deepest work that we're here to do is with the suffering of the earth, the suffering of our brothers and sisters, the suffering of those that are less privileged, those who are living in injustices. So the greatest gift we can do is to walk in both of these worlds, okay? So the journey of the soul is a journey into the unknown, but it's also the journey into the darkest parts of ourselves. So this journey that you're joining me on isn't just all light and love. It's actually going to be a journey to look at your deepest wounds, your deepest shadows, your deepest fears, your beliefs and stories, traumas, pain, things like that are blocking your heart from being fully open. So the way that I have come to understand creating peace in the world, because I've been a big peace activist my whole life, and I was on the front lines a lot and wore the activist hat. And what I came to learn my time at Standing Rock was that the only way that I was going to create peace in the world, the only way that I was going to show up in more love, was to do my own inner work. And then from there, to do the inner work in my family. And then from there, in my community right here, where I'm placed. And then that ripples out into the world. So I came home from Standing Rock, and over the last 6 years have been diving even deeper into my deepest wounds and shadows so that I could cultivate more peace within myself. And so that's the journey that we're moving through. So if you've had a reading with me and you know your human design, your gene keys especially, what we can see in there is our individual shadows and gifts, our individual theme or purpose, how we light up the world. So we have our individual soul's blueprint, and then we have the collective soul blueprint. So as we move through the transits, and that's when I'm saying transit, I'm talking about where the stars and where the planets are right now, that mirrors the earth, a map of the heavens that mirror in us and mirror here on earth, the story where we're here to write. When we move through transits, we're not only moving through our individual aspects of ourselves, but we're moving through the collective. So where we're moving now holds the collective wounds, as well as the highest aspects of humanity. And this will make more and more sense as we journey along. So this isn't just an individual journey, but a collective journey to see what we're moving through and then what the collective is. So this journey is about love. Ra-Uru is the man that brought through human design. And I love this quote: "You are not here to be loved, but to be love." And we all, of course, want to receive love. We want to be loved. We're here to be loved. We get nurtured by being loved, but the highest aspect of ourselves is to be that love. And the more that we embody love, the more love we will actually receive. It's a give and take. It's mutual reciprocity. It's a sacred gift that love is. And that's the journey we're on. part of this journey is then to understand who and what we are. I call it the great remembering, because when we start to really remember who we are, we naturally embody love more. Because what's more important to us is the focusing on who we actually are, our gifts. We start to move out of the conditioning that other people and our beliefs, the school system, churches have put upon us, because we start to really know ourselves. And we really start to know ourselves, we realize we're not separate from the world, but we are one with the world. And then we see that every single one of us is a part of the whole, and every single one of us plays a note in God's symphony, and every single one of us has a gift to share. Every single one of us has a unique soul's blueprint and unique experiences that are unlike anybody else. And when we bring all those things together, that creates this symphony. And if your note's not in tune, if you know music, it's going to sound off. So the symphony right now is off, because we are not all attuned to that higher frequency. And I love this analogy because I love music and helps me understand this divine story we're here to write. So this journey is a journey that calls us into radical responsibility, to take responsibility for who you are. And there's no coincidence what gene key we're moving to today, which I'll go through here in a minute. If you've never heard of what the gene keys are, the gene keys came through from a man named Richard Rudd, and it originated from the I Ching, and it goes through our 64 DNA codes. And we know from science that DNA holds information, story. And the gene keys goes through each of these 64 codes, each of these 64 archetypes, and invites us to embrace our shadows and our wounds, our greatest fears, where we have beliefs in those, in order to release the gift of who we are and to embody the city. The city is like our heavenly state, the highest state. So the city is love. So what we're going to be doing is contemplating both our shadows and then the highest aspect of love. Because when you contemplate the highest aspect of love, it's going to naturally start to transform our genes, our genetic coding, the story that we're writing. So this is scientific and sacred. This is a sacred science. But first we have to embrace our shadows. So that's why I'm saying it's not all love and light, because unless you actually embrace your deepest suffering, it's a false light. So we're talking in the gene keys too about frequency, about our beings being frequency. The lower state, the shadow, is the lower frequency. And most of humanity, the collective, and most of us are vibrating at this lower frequency. And the more people that awaken to the higher frequencies, it's like a tuning fork. When somebody that's vibrating in fear at a lower frequency gets around somebody that's vibrating at a higher frequency, and your heart's activated and you're just embodying love, it's like a tuning fork. You will attune them to the higher states of love. It's all frequency. When we went into the lockdown, I would really activate my heart in prayer and meditation and dance, and I would get myself as joyful and as happy and as loving as I could be. And then I would go out to grocery stores or places that were open, and I would just like pretend I was like a Care Bear, like just activating people with my heart and just seeing what happened. And people would start to come up to me. I had elderly people that would take off their masks, and I would say, "Would you like a hug?" And I just started to witness miracles when I was going out and people were terrified. I would witness these miracles, not by saying a word, but just letting my energy do the work for me. And it was magic. It really taught me so much about the power that we have to love. That's what we're going to be moving through. So the gene keys is a universal language made up of 64 genetic archetypes. So we understand archetypes because they help us in story, the hero's journey, the victim, the hero, you know, all the lessons that are played. That's why Greek mythology works in archetypes, and in the Bible, there are parables, and the archetypes help us understand things and contemplate things. So the Gene Keys is a language made up of 64 different archetypes. And when we contemplate these things and integrate these things, they allow us to rewrite our stories. They are also a transmission, or you could use the word a prophecy. You know, some people use the word download, transmission, or we could use the word prophecy, where God brings a message through. And the only way to understand these is not through the heart, not through the head, but through the heart, because we have to contemplate them. Okay. So the three paths then to truth are meditation, contemplation, and concentration. Meditation works on the right side of the brain. We consciously go into a state of meditation. It does take practice, right? But we're consciously saying, I'm going to go into a state of meditation now, whether that's sitting by a brook, however that is for you. Some people, like manifesting generators, need to be moving their body or drawing or doing things to actually quiet the mind in order to meditate. Everybody meditates in a different way, but it is a right brain action where we get ourselves into a state where we're just witnessing our thoughts, we're witnessing our feelings, we are just being a witness to life. Then concentration is the left side of the brain, and that's using more effort, where we work with the heart, the mind, and the body and the soul to concentrate on something. So in other words, these two, the right brain and the left brain, come together in contemplation. And contemplation is the art of the mystics. Contemplation is where we transform something on the cellular level, and it integrates the right brain and the left brain. It's the corpus callosum that integrates the pineal and the pituitary in the brain, the feminine part of the brain and the masculine part of the brain. Contemplation is where we take an idea, a parable, a poem, something we read in a book, a gene key, and we use the mind and the heart, the left and the right brain, to contemplate something in a way. And that is what the gene keys are meant to be, a contemplation. You will learn something and absorb something new from these the more you go through them. And what I've realized in the last few years in moving through the gene keys and through the stars as the energy is actually happening is we end up working in relationship with them. So collectively right now, we're going through the shadow of victimization. So what I've started to see is people's, like during the transit of victimization, people's deepest victimization things come up. I had a friend yesterday morning, as we just moved into that gene key, like, let me know, oh, this certain person just sent me this message that's just like blaming me for all their problems and just like vomited all of this negativity on me when we've been working, we've been doing so well. What is going on in the stars? It's like, well, our deepest victim wounds are coming up. So in that space, we get to hold space for ourselves. If we know it's getting ready to happen, we can even use the energy before it happens to say, okay, all right, I'm getting ready to move through that. What can I do to prepare myself? If there are genetic codes, then maybe we want to take a few days off when something big's moving through. Maybe we want to prepare to go into the woods or go to the beach that day. Or maybe if it's a relationship wound, we want to have time with our mother or our father or somebody that we have relationship struggles with, to work on those kind of things in contemplation and in intention. So that's what I've seen happen for me in the last couple of years. And I use the gene keys in alignment with where the planets actually are. So I write the gene keys out. So you guys are going to see what we're moving through actually. So in the tropical system, they believe that the sun is in Aries right now. So they believe that we're moving through a different gene key. But the sun is in Pisces right now. And we just started moving through the 57th gene key. So that's the intention here, okay? I'm also going to be integrating some of the Gnostic texts, and I'm going to be using Aramaic translations of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene's teachings, because I use a type of astrology called Astrosophy, the wisdom of the stars aligned with Christ. And if you haven't watched the video of that, it's going to be in your library, so you guys can watch that for free. It's actually free online, so you can share it with other people if they're like, what is this? The Gospel of Philip was left out of the Bible. And listen to what he says. Truth did not come naked into the world, but came as archetypes and images so that the world would be able to receive it. Rebirth exists, therefore, through the archetypes of rebirth and through its images, you will certainly be reborn. In Philip and Thomas and some of the books that were left out of the Bible, there are a lot of references to the archetypes of the stars, to numerology, to metaphysics, to esoteric things, to crystals, to dream work, to all these things that were left out of the Bible. And we're going to be integrating some of those things. I want to be able to play in all of these sacred sciences together. And the heart of our work is in contemplation. So as we journey together, today we're going to only look at this one gene key. And then I'm going to send some emails out and let you know what we're moving through this month. So you'll be able to know ahead of time, this is what we're getting to move through. And you can start to contemplate these things together. So the 55th gene key, to live in a world made of gifts. Did you know that strawberries used to be wild everywhere? Strawberries used to be wild everywhere, not everywhere, probably in the deserts. Strawberries weren't wild, but strawberries were a gift that was wild. Blueberries, raspberries, pomegranates. They're the sacred ecology, the sacred Garden of Eden is Earth. And once upon a time, we lived in a world that was made of gifts. I'm reading a book right now by Charles Eisenstein about money as a sacred gift, because we are about to see a real big transition in money on the planet, and we're witnessing that right now. And as these fallen systems, as these corrupted systems that are not really aligned with our soul, as they fall away, it's going to allow us to step more into the gift, to see the world once again as a gift. When you start to study the gene keys, you're going to see that the 55th and the 22nd gene keys are the longest chapters, because these two gene keys hold the keys for the great transformation of Earth. So I think that I'm going to create another whole, whether I just video it myself or I have a live call on the 55th, because it's too much. It's a very long class, but we're going to dive a little bit into it today, because it's our deepest wound, which is victimization. It's the deepest wound that holds us back from who we are. And it's the only gene key where the gift and the siddhi are exactly the same, freedom. Two different aspects of freedom, but we are here to be free. It's what we all long for, our sovereignty and our freedom and unity and harmony. We desire to live in a world made of gifts. And when I'm talking about gifts, I'm talking about abundance. I'm talking about prosperity. I'm talking about the way that we're created to be, where we are living life at the frequency of love, where we have a relationship with nature, where we honor nature as a sacred gift, as sentient beings, where we ask the tree before we take from her, where we sit with our back against her and let her tell us our stories, let her tell us her stories, where we remember that the trees are speaking to us, that our animals are speaking to us, that there is a language that has been lost, but it is ours to reclaim. It just takes contemplation, slowing down, intention, and time to remember these gifts. And it's a big code, this 55th gene key. How many of us are still living in victimization? And so this is a big one that we're moving through. And no coincidence, that's how we're starting our journey. So what if the key to this great awakening that we all hold on our hearts lives within us? The gene keys is this gift for us that helps us contemplate our DNA, that when we contemplate it, it starts to trigger an awakening within us. And these two are the most important genetic codes that we have that really hold the keys to waking up the entirety of humanity. And I will create a class that goes deeper into it because it goes really deep. And those who want to dive into that with me, I will prepare a class for us for that. But the story, I'm going to simplify it as much as I can today. So the story behind this is that we actually do reap what we sow. It's the law of karma. It's the law of permaculture. It's the law of energy and action, right? So we have a choice every day in the choices that we're making, what we're consuming, how we use our words, how we use our actions, what our daily practices are, what we're putting our energy in. Every single moment we have a choice in how we're showing up. And we are going to reap that which we sow. So the shadow of victimization invites us to take radical responsibility for ourselves. That's a big one. And it starts in childhood. If we start this in childhood with our children, allowing them to have the freedom to make choices and then to experience what happens when they make certain choices, giving them boundaries, but allowing children to experience that they're going to reap what they sow. That begins the journey for us. And I've been reading about in the Gnostic text, and the laws of permaculture and abundance are literally written in the text. There is, even in Leviticus in the Aramaic, it's talking about how if you work the land for 6 years, and the 7th year, you rest and you reap the harvest. And if we start to understand 7-year cycles, there's a deep message in these 7-year cycles. And then it goes on to say, okay, so in the 7th year, you rest. And in the 8th year, you begin that 6th cycle again. And at the end of that cycle, you are in what they say is Jubilee. Because you've created, if you understand permaculture too, permaculture is a system where certain plants are planted beside other plants that work in harmony together, that repel bugs, that repel weeds, and that when you honor the land and you have this relationship with the land, that eventually it takes over itself and you just are reaping the harvest. You have enough pecans, you have enough berries, you have spinach, you have these vegetables, and we have abundance in that way. We can reflect that also in our spiritual work, in our soul's work. So in human design, they say it's an experience, a sacred experience, an experiment for 7 years. That for 7 years, you contemplate these aspects of yourselves. So people will have a reading with me and then they feel like overwhelmed by it because it's so much. But I'm like, yeah, this was just the blueprint that I gave. This is all it is the blueprint. You actually have to do the actual work of contemplating it. And you're meant to contemplate it over these 7 years to really embody the higher aspects of yourself. And I feel, as I've been working in this so long, that the more I contemplate it in relationship with what we're moving through, the faster I move through things. It's like the idea of, if you want to get a lot of sun, and I know some of you, you would know which time of the day to go out and not get burnt, or which day to get the most vitamin D, because the light is the brightest at a certain time. I kind of like use that analogy with working with the planets. Right now, the planets are in the alignment of our core wounds of victimization. So it's a good time to start to address those things. So we reap what we sow, which invites us into radical responsibility. What goes around comes around. Our victim state is our worst enemy. And it asks us to say, it's not about what happens to you, but how you choose to react to what happens to you. Okay. You're not a victim of your past. And this is a big one to really deeply contemplate, because then we could go into, well, so-and-so was born in this third world country, and so-and-so was born in this environment. How can we compare ourselves? Well, we are not meant to compare ourselves. We each have a different story that we're here to play on earth. So that's why this state of victimization can only be transformed by looking deeply within ourselves, taking radical responsibility for ourselves. And then when we step into more of a higher frequency of love, then we get to lift up our brothers. We'll be called to more empathy. We'll be called to more action. We'll be called to understand suffering in a different way, because then we'll be able to empathize and put ourselves in the shoes of somebody living in a third world country, or somebody that hasn't had the privileges that we have. We'll start to see the world in a different way once we step out of our own victimization. So I'll when we have questions on the calls like this, there's going to be a place where I put these images so that you can, maybe you're a note taker, maybe you're not. So you'll be able to contemplate these over the next few weeks. So where are you still a victim of your unconscious belief patterns? So the one thing you can do is to start looking within yourself and looking at maybe the most prominent victim patterns. If it's that you're struggling in relationship, then looking at those. If it's that you're struggling with finances, it's looking at those. So looking at your belief patterns that form your victimization states. Where are you still a victim of your past? I could never have healed from being sexually abused, raped, and all the ways that I was abused until I took responsibility myself to forgive the people that had done the things to me, because I was going to be trapped in that victim story forever. Well, I'm this way because this happened to me. Don't you understand? And so it allowed me to take on the diagnosis of bipolar when I was 22, because the doctor said, oh, you're bipolar, and that fit in my mind. Okay, well then that's why I must have allowed this to happen, because I'm this wounded person, I'm this bad person. I even had a belief that the things happened to me because I deserved it, because of the story of original sin. That's why I teach more of the story of original innocence. You're born pure and of God. You're not born evil or bad. You're not born separate of God. And I know that's a trigger for a lot of people. But when we really start to contemplate Yeshua and what he came to teach us, in the Aramaic, it is that he did not say he was here to save, but to transform the world. And there's a big difference. Savior puts us in a victimization state. Me being in a victimization state also, even when I started to forgive my abuser, then I stepped into a savior role, and I was still living in the shadow of victimization, because then I thought, oh, I've got it now. So now I can save people. And then I was out there trying to save everyone. And that's still the shadow of victimization. Where really being a love leader is just sitting with somebody and listening to their story in so much love that you're not trying to fix it. You're not trying to heal them. You're not trying to tell them what to do. You're empowering them to know that it's all within them. So I want to inspire love leaders that aren't trying to fix or honestly manipulate people. To manipulate people. I want to inspire love leaders who are here to inspire others that they can heal themselves, that they can lead themselves, that the power is within you. That's what this is about. Another thing we can do is look at where we're still blaming other people, where we're blaming something outside of ourselves, our experiences, somebody that hurt us, blaming our parents. That's a big one. And as we journey through this together, we're going to have lots of opportunities to look at victimization, because this theme runs through all the gene keys, really. So forgiving our parents is forgiving our grandparents and their parents and the ancestors before them. It's a beautiful love story that we're going to write. So what stories are you ready to rewrite? Because this steps us into freedom, which is what I would call, they call it the great change. I would call it the great remembering. I believe we're in the great remembering, which is the great awakening. And I call it the remembering because when we start to know ourselves through God, through Creator, through the divine, it's a remembrance of who we were created to be. It's a remembrance of our connection with each other and with nature. We will see money once again as a gift frequency. So that thank you so much for gifting to me so that I can give more to others. Right? When we see that food is a gift, we're going to change the entire system. When we see education as a gift, the entire system will change. Everything will change when we come to see the world as a gift again. Because when you step into your gifts, it won't be about sharing it for money or fame or fortune. It will be because you know that this is the gift that you carry, and everything you've been through brings you to share this gift. And we will once again live in a world made of gifts. When I was at Standing Rock, I got to experience a world made of gifts, and I didn't want to leave. And many of us didn't want to leave because some people really love to cut wood, and they would just cut wood all day long. And some people love to cook, so they'd be up at the crack of dawn to cook. I never got up earlier in my life than when I was at Standing Rock, but I was up an hour before the sun every day for 7 months because I couldn't wait to feed people in the freezing cold, like thawing out frozen eggs because I couldn't wait to crack open 300 frozen eggs to feed people. Because we got to share our gifts. Some people love to sing, and so they would sit around a fire and just sing. Monet learned to play the ukulele and sing, and she would sit in the kitchen. And when people would come in weary from the front lines, she would just sit there and sing and bring joy to people. Children that are autistic. I just did a reading for a little girl that's nonverbal. And just in her presence, I witnessed her gift. I was moved. Everybody carries a gift. And this great remembering and this freedom is to remember our gifts, and remember our gifts will activate the abundance of spirit, the abundance of God on this earth. If we just let go and get out of the way, God's going to move. And then it shifts us into prosperity. And prosperity is different than wealth. We have a lot of people teaching about wealth because there's a money crisis coming. But wealth is not going to save us. Prosperity is going to save us. And when the money system crumbles, people will be called to grow foods in their garden. And it will start as simple as on your street, getting together with 8 different families maybe and saying, hey, what do you love to do? What do you love to do? Oh, I have a gym in my garage. Okay, well, you can use my gym. Oh, I have bikes and you don't have bikes. You can use my bikes. Oh, I have more land. Let's grow this and let's share. Let's have a day that we can all of our food together. And it will start everywhere in that way. And it doesn't matter. A lot of people are being called to have land, and that's beautiful, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be in your subdivisions, in your townhouse communities, in your apartment buildings. It is just the call to come together and share our gifts again. We started to see it in the last few years, and we're going to have an invitation to do it more and more in this great remembering. So also over the next couple of weeks, you can think about what beliefs that you have around being fully supported and abundant, because you are fully supported and abundant. So what beliefs do you have that are holding you back from believing that you're supported and that you are abundant? And this is the big one. I would love to read what people write when they really contemplate this and sit with this. What is the gift that you would give the world if you were free to do so? Because a lot of people, I work with so many people that would say, oh man, I would do this if I just had enough money. And it breaks my heart because I'm like, then do that thing. We all need to be doing those things. And so many people would give more if they had more, but we have enough. We have enough. There's a book that if you're really called to this, it's called Sacred Economics. And it is an invitation into this world made of gifts. Braiding Sweetgrass is another one. But it's the call of what would you give the world? If your friend was hurting right now and what would you want to do? You want to bring your soup. You'd want to spend the day with her. And this idea that we have, that time is money. Oh man, that's a fallen belief that has to change. Because we're saying that because money has become a currency. And in the original, before money, what first started us into money was this idea of debt, where we got indebted for things. So another thing to look at when we're talking about abundance, moving from scarcity to abundance, is how we choose to be in debt. I lost my house in foreclosure in 2008, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I was in debt at my house, and I was like $40,000 in debt from my business. And it was when I had the big call to get off of all my medications, because I was on 8 different medications, paying a psychiatrist $300 a week, who then, as soon as I lost my house, said, well, sorry, I can't help you anymore. I was spending $1,000 a month on medications that just kept making me sicker and sicker. And I lost my house and my photography business and my studio, and I was homeless. A month later, my car blew up and I didn't have a car. And so I was left with nothing materially. And it was the greatest gift that God ever gave me, because it has led me on this path of spirit-led journey. And it's helped me create freedom in my life. Okay. And it helped me activate my gift. But I haven't been able to have credit since then. And I can see how the debt story plays out in holding us back from sharing our gifts too. So we can start to think about, if we're worried about scarcity, where are we in debt, and what are we choosing to use our resources for? Now to the love part of freedom. So how do I embody love? How do I open my heart? This is the journey that we're going to be on, to open our heart, to live from a fully open heart, to not let the suffering that we experience close off our heart, because your suffering contains the seeds of your highest heart. This is my little niece, Josephine. She has taught me more about miracles in the last few years. She's taught us all. She came here to teach us about miracles and living from the heart. She came here with a rare heart illness, because she's here to help us heal the heart of our family through this rare heart illness that she's miraculously healing. And her story has broken the hearts of our family open to more faith, to more love, to more connection, to living in more presence, to honoring our time together, because our time is more important than anything. We were told that we'd only have her for a week or two, and here we are. She's going to be 4 this year. And she went from being on 14 medications to be taking half of an aspirin a day. She is proving miracles to us and teaching us so much about love. She is a wild-hearted soul. She's teaching us the sacredness of this gift that she came to share with us. So this is an invitation to look at our deepest wounds and understand that that's where our medicine lies. To be in our heart asks us to pause, to contemplate, to not escape what we're feeling, to not numb it, but to be at home in our heart, because our heart is our home, whether it's broken or not. And actually, if it's broken, that's actually the deeper medicine, because our true teacher lives in our heart, and that's where the Spirit of God waits for us all. I want to close with an analogy of the heart being like a bird in a cage. So when we close up our hearts, it's like a bird in a cage that gets constricted and constricted and constricted. Imagine that the more we close off our heart, the smaller the cage gets. The smaller the cage gets, and the smaller the cage gets. Because we start to build walls around our heart through our experiences, through our pain, through expecting other people or material things to fulfill our heart. By not sharing our gifts, that cage gets smaller and smaller and smaller. if you're living in a job that you hate, that's sucking the life out of you, and you're only doing it for money, I'm not saying to go quit your job tomorrow, but if you're doing a job that you can't stand and you know that you're here for something bigger, and you're only doing the job for money, and you're not also living your purpose, and I believe your purpose doesn't have to be the job you do, it's just how you show up. But if there's things in your life that are constricting you and holding you back from your highest heart, that's that cage that you can look at it as the victimization cage that holds us and keeps us as a victim. It keeps us trapped, and it locks our frequency up. And we're not magnetizing the thing in life that we want to magnetize ourselves to. Our heart's not open. And you look at this bird, and here this bird is in this beautiful place and wants to fly, wants to be free, and it's trapped in this cage on a tree. So the way we unlock the cage and step into freedom is through opening our heart and little by little chipping away at those bricks that have been laid around your heart that have blocked you from love, from receiving love, from giving love, and from living in love. But this is the journey that we're on. I love you. I love you. I love you. I'm so excited to be on this journey with you. I will also let you know that the next gene key we move through is gene key 37, which the shadow is weakness. The gift is equality. I can't read. Equality. And then the city is tenderness. And I'll be writing you a little love note when we step into that gene key next. But really, I invite you to contemplate this shadow, this gene key, this city of freedom, and how we can all step into more love moving forward. Ah, I love you. I love you. I'm going to stop the recording, and then we're going to have some time for comments and questions.